other people were invited. Other people were invited. All right, very good.
Okay, well, thank you all for being here at our Equity Lens / Chapter 97 Task Force. I'm Trigerico. I'm the chair. I'm also a member of the Greater HRC and a resident of Ward 2. And I'll go ahead and pass it to Kathy and just pass it to the next person when you're done introducing yourself, please.
Hi, I'm Kathy. I'm a member of the Human Rights Commission and of this work group. My pronouns are she, her, and I'll pass it to Mike.
Hi, I'm Mike Waters, and I'm a member of the work group and the commission. I'm in Ward 7, and my pronouns are they and them. I'll pass it to Gretchen.
Hi, Gretchen Bennett, staff to the team, and pronouns are she, her.
Awesome. Thank you all. Also, I forgot my pronouns are they, them. Gretchen, do we have any public comment?
We did receive public comment via in written format from Linnell, who is now arriving at the meeting. So
oh, great. Okay.
You should have that in your email box, but we've received no additional public comment.
Okay, great. Thank you. Hi, Linnell. Thank you so much for joining us. If you can hear me, we just did introductions and we did receive your written public comment. So thank you for that. Does anyone have any questions or additional discussion around that before we move on? Or Linnell, if you would like to say anything, please feel welcome to do so.
Oh, and you're on mute.
Okay, thank you. I'm at Safe Sleep's kitchen cooking dinner, so it'll look a little weird. But no, I'm so grateful for what your group is considering. And obviously, I have strong opinions about that, partly because the Statesman article really was a catalyst for us to see that what we're hearing from people in the camps is actually happening, now in town. And kind of like we're not the only ones hearing it now. It actually happened in a place where it could have an article and publicity and people could be aware of that kind of thing happening. But whether it's getting more prevalent or we've just had relationships where people are more willing to start sharing those things, we're hearing more and more of those stories. And now we're even seeing it where one friend saw some kids beating up or trying to harass and beat up an older gentleman with a shopping cart. And to me, the hate crimes that we already have established are there for very valid reasons, where some individuals are targeted specifically because they're marginalized in our communities. And to me, there's like I have no comprehension how you can purposely target people that are already marginalized, whether it's transgender individuals or individuals who are Black or any other minorities, but to also target people who are homeless, who are literally down and out, and kicking them when they're down. I have no comprehension. And it just seems like it's the same thing as any of the other hate crime categories that we've established. And then, if you happen to have had time to read any of the report that I had attached, it was a very hard report that shows that this is happening nationally in some of the examples. And some of it I couldn't even read. But to know that it's happening at a national level as well, and that it's not setting a precedent to establish crimes against homeless individuals as a hate crime. I'm sure there's complications and things to consider and possible unintended consequences, but it's not setting a precedent. And to me, those same, unintended consequences and possibilities would occur with any status, with any category. And no more so or no less so with individuals who are homeless. And if you were able to read the email, I think it mostly says everything I feel, and it includes the examples. But just a story, this is a shelter, and we happen to like cats. So we put cat food out outside our shelter. And the other night, we I heard a lot of like rattling around, and I looked outside and there were 2 raccoons. So I posted on Facebook, shelter life, we've got raccoons outside. It was cute. A few nights later, a different raccoon came, and he was a big, furry, beautiful dude. And he's eating the cat food, but he's taking a couple of bites and then he's like turning around, because we have a camp established outside of our shelter that is no longer there. But at the time, it's a lot of people. A lot of them are men. Some of them are people who get kind of rowdy and talk a lot or yell or scream. And the raccoon was taking a few bites and then turning around and watching so that he could make sure he was safe while he took a few bites. And then he would turn around and take a few more bites as he faced the building, and then turn around and face the camp. And I thought, this is exactly what our ladies are going through when they're on the streets. This is exactly what men are going through when they're trying to sleep on the streets and wondering if someone is going to come in the middle of the night and beat them up, or in the middle of the day now. If you're going to wake up because someone's peeing on you. That raccoon was like, this is the epitome of exactly what our ladies and gentlemen on the streets are living through, where you have to constantly be on guard to see if you're going to be the next victim of someone simply because you're homeless. So that's probably mostly it. But if you have any questions or anything else, I'm happy to jump in. And thank you so much for considering this topic.
Thank you, Linnell. Your insight is always really powerful. I really like that you tell stories too, because I think it really helps people kind of get out of that heady space, because like the reports are really important, but it can be hard to humanize what's happening, which is human beings are being attacked and hurt, and that's not okay. So, I really want to move forward with this. And I also appreciate what you brought up about unintended consequences, because that is something that we have discussed. However, I still think that moving forward with some protection for our unsheltered neighbors is going to be the best bet. We know that putting that into law doesn't stop it, right? But it starts the process so that we can start doing something about it. Because unfortunately, in our society as it is now, there's always going to be someone who is deemed less than human. And right now, I think our unsheltered folks are getting that label more often than a lot of people usually get. And they usually have other marginalizations. So, I really want to make it clear where we stand and have that in place. So again, thank you for being here, and thank you for sharing your thoughts and your stories. It's really appreciated.
Thank you so much. And like you said, I think unintended consequences are going to be happening, but how is that different than any other status of hate crime? Exactly. And it doesn't stop hate crimes. People still do them, but it makes a really firm statement that you can't treat people as subhuman for certain categories, for any category. And I just feel like this one warrants being in that category.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I mean, a lot of people, I think, misunderstand the situation someone might find themselves, and they might think it's a choice, or they might think that choices led to it. But the thing is, we also protect choices. Religion is a choice, and it is a protected class. And so if we can protect those choices, we can also protect other choices. And even if those choices lead to not great things like criminality, criminals also have rights, right? We can't just mistreat people when they do something wrong. So I think it's really important that we put this into a code and start that process of getting some protections in place.
And is it appropriate to add to that, or no?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. As our street was being swept, because we did have enough problems at our camp outside, and having so many men, especially right outside of a women's home and shelter, we very ambivalently and sadly supported the sweep happening. But one of the gentlemen, who is a neighbor who has wanted the sweep to have happened ages ago, was outside with me, and we were talking, and I was teary, and I said, this is not a place for that, because it's a women's homeless shelter. I get there's no place for people to go. I think this one makes us a slight distinguishing factor of, let's look the other way most of the time if the behavior is acceptable. But in front of a women's homeless shelter, to me, that was the distinguishing factor. And our neighbor, who's very nice, he said, these people have somewhere else to go, just you're enabling them. And I said, I think that I thought that too, But as you get to know individuals who are homeless, you see how many individuals have experienced extreme trauma and abuse. And it changes your brain wiring. So the things that we think just do this or just do that are not a just do this or just do that. What looks like a choice can often be an actual inability because the brain wiring has had to be in fight or flight survival mode for so long. And he's like, well, I worked at UGM and served for years. So I know they can actually, make other choices. And I thanked him for his service because 14 years of serving at a homeless shelter is big. And I said, the thing to think about, though, is the individuals that you're serving in a homeless shelter are the individuals who have enough mental and physical health to get into a homeless shelter. You're not serving the individuals who don't even meet that criteria. Those are the individuals that are often on the streets and have nowhere else to go because most of them, or so many of them, would not meet the criteria for just being able to take care of themselves physically and mentally enough to be able to enter a shelter and meet their criteria. He's like, well, that's the exception. And I said, I thought that too. So, even when you focus on choice versus, freedom of choice, I totally agree with you. Yet this work has led me to think that there's more people who don't have that choice than I ever realized. And I also used to think that school is the great equalizer. We have public schools. So how is everybody not enabled to have the same opportunities? And then you hear about the kid who was up all night because his dad was beating up his mom, or his mom skipped dinner so that he could have food. How does that kid have the same opportunities when his headspace and his survival mode and his trauma is so much more significant than me, who went to school and my parents got divorced? And yeah, maybe I was traumatized, but we had food on the table. My dad wasn't beating up my mom. It's horrible to compare pain or trauma. And yet sometimes I think it's relevant because the scope and the depth and the length of time that some people are experiencing this, there's nothing that equalizes that, not even public school, which I thought did.
Yeah, those are all really good things to consider. And I do think you're right that, the folks that are out on the street are not the folks who can easily just walk into a shelter. There's often barriers. That's why we've tried to get the city to reduce barriers. And, it's not a choice. That's a misconception. And even things that look like choices often aren't. So again, thank you. And welcome, Angelo. Thank you for joining us. So next we're going to move to our approval of minutes. Has everyone had the opportunity to take a look at that? And if so, can we get a motion to approve?
I will make a motion.
Thank you.
I'll second that motion.
All right. Any opposed? Okay, I did that backwards. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. So, next we have our recommended amendments to Chapter 97. So if everyone has had a chance to look at that, I'm going to open that up for discussion, and I'm going to step away for one quick second because my dog's freaking out. She stole popcorn off of my table that she wasn't supposed to, and it's very salty, so she needs a drink, but I can hear you. So 1 second.
Did each of you receive the attachment okay? Very good.
Yeah. And if I remember correctly from when we last met, we were still, if there were other things in chapter 97 that we wanted to maybe raise, that would be okay to do that tonight too. We weren't.
Correct.
Yes. So I think this one is predominantly talking about unsheltered status, and then kind of removing the part about gender identity that was kind of like a loophole around if a person was in a housing situation and the other people in that housing situation had some sort of religious thing, they could be like, no, you can't be here because your gender identity, which we thought was not great. So we're proposing the removal of that. Was there anything else in chapter 97 that we wanted to address with this?
So I found a few things when I was looking more closely at the language that I
Okay.
wanted to at least raise to the group.
Yeah.
There were 3 different places that it uses either himself or herself or him or her. And I'm wondering if we maybe want to suggest that that be completely, refer to themselves, or in the one place, I don't think we even need to have any reference like that at all, if that would be a suggestion. And then the definition of sexual orientation, I'm wondering if that's not too narrow, and I don't know if this is beyond the scope of what we started looking at, but I've seen other definitions that are a little more broad, and I wonder if we don't want to talk about that as.
Could you read it out maybe, Kathy? Because I'm
Yeah,
not familiar
so the
with it.
definition of sexual orientation means actual or perceived heterosexuality, homosexuality, or bisexuality, period. And
Oh,
that's it.
yeah, no.
So
There's a lot more.
Oh, that's funny. Thank you for catching that. Okay, yeah, no, we definitely need to expand that. I mean,
Is
isn't
it
there like a
expanded, or is there like a more generic,
yeah,
like
yeah, that's what
all
I'm thinking.
sexualities?
Yeah. Like, how can we make this general so it's like,
Because there's so many. If we try to expand it, it's going to be like an 8-page list.
right, right.
Right,
Is there
right.
more open-ended that we can do, that we can put in there so it's not?
yeah. So, I mean, can we just say that? Oh gosh, but that's the thing, is there's so many ways to describe this. I'm having a hard time because like I think of it as attraction, but like then there's asexuality. So it's like attraction or lack thereof,
Mhm.
right? Which can be completely dependent on gender, or completely like, let's talk about gender and sexuality 101. Okay.
And I have to apologize for not being as familiar with the statute, but does it define all the categories?
I don't think
Is it
so.
just sexual orientation that's because maybe it doesn't even need.
I almost want to say that the other categories might be defined in state law or elsewhere. So not everything is defined.
Okay.
But don't quote me on that.
Yeah, I'm wondering if we could use the Human Rights Campaign's definition is an inherent or immutable, enduring emotional, romantic, or sexual attraction to other people. And I kind of like that because it's not, these specific labels. It's very inclusive of people who do not experience different forms of attraction, and also just says people as opposed to specific genders.
Mhm.
I like that.
And I also want to say, I don't know if this is included, but like discrimination of a person's sexual orientation or perceived. I think that was in the beginning of the one you read, right?
Yeah. Actual
Yeah.
or perceived.
I do want to keep that in there because I think that's very important.
Mhm. Well, and is this an example where we would want to suggest something specific? Because I know when we had the city attorney talk to us last time and talking about housing status, it was more suggest the concept, but then they would come after council
True,
decided to go that
true.
way, then
Okay.
they would work on the language. And I don't know how specific our recommendation should be in this. I don't know if that's a question for him, but
So
I do think though your pronoun recommendation is
Yeah.
important enough
Mhm.
to raise, even if it's a minor, quick word change that has a lot of meaning.
so
But
maybe
yeah, maybe it's saying the definition of sexual orientation is too narrow, and then provide maybe the HRC example, and then they run with it.
yeah, I like that. So I think in Gretchen, can we amend? Now, do we have to vote on amendments to this, or can we just amend it and then have a final thing that we propose to the greater Human Rights Commission and then the city?
if the group is comfortable with this, I think we can amend, just keep talking through amendments.
Okay.
And
Okay.
then if you'd like to vote this evening, you could have me repeat back the amendments I'm hearing to make sure that we've captured them all. And then you could
Okay.
vote one time. It would just simplify things for you.
Yes. So I'm hearing the first one, Kathy caught, which is a little bit more specific, is removal of she, her, him, he, him gendered language, and replacing with they, them where necessary, or removing it entirely if possible.
Mhm.
So I think there's a couple different ways that's playing out grammatically. Yeah, Kathy.
Yeah, there's a couple different contexts in which
Okay.
it comes up. And I don't know, Gretchen, did you happen to see the email? I think I sent it yesterday, but I sent you an email with the specific section numbers.
No, I didn't, Kathy.
Okay.
I will look right now to make sure I've got it.
And I have them written down too. I can just tell you what they are as well.
Oh, I see right here. Thank you. I've got it right here.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, and then revision of the definition of sexual orientation to be something more inclusive. I think because then they can decide on the specific language. I'd also be really curious what Oregon Revised Statute says about it, because I think it helps when we're in alignment with that, but doesn't necessarily mean that I want the same thing. So I'd be kind of curious what that says.
I didn't see a definition in chapter 6.9a, but I didn't look.
Okay.
I didn't look elsewhere, so I don't know if
Yeah.
there's one in another chapter somewhere.
Yeah, so that would be worth reviewing, but I'm glad you mentioned that they were wanting us to kind of propose the general things, and then they can kind of maverick the legalese, right?
Although I do think it would be good to offer an example, or
Okay.
some of the reasons why this definition is not okay.
Gretchen, I'll email you that one from Human Rights Campaign really quick. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so we've got pronouns, we've got definition of sexual orientation. Was there anything else that we wanted to discuss in chapter 97?
I had two small, or one edit, I guess, and one is like a question. The edit is just on the second page in the header. It refers to safe space program. I think that's just a leftover from maybe how the document started, and should say chapter 97 or whatever.
Copy
But
that.
then the question I had, and it's maybe a little bit leading, my question, you have to forgive me, but it says in the piece about the gender identity and sexual orientation, it specifically says this section is consistent with Oregon Revised Statute. And to me, that's a leading sentence that's basically saying, like, I don't know why it's there, I guess, if that makes sense. Like, I think that the legal analysis should be like a little bit separate from necessarily how, like, it's kind of saying, well, this is how it's done. Is the vibe it gives me. And so I don't know, it gave me a little eek. But that was the only things that I saw. Otherwise, I really liked the direction of it. Well, actually, one last thing, which is the background on Madison, Wisconsin. Is Madison the only place that does that? I can't imagine they are. And so are we kind of just, is that background providing enough in terms of how widespread this idea is, or I don't know. I just wasn't sure if that was helping a lot, and if it was accurate in terms of like, are they the only ones, or there's probably a lot of others. So those are the only three things that, and if I keep reading, I'll probably find something else. I'm gonna stop talking.
Yeah, I guess that would be a question, Gretchen, for the lawyer. Do we have to include the bit that says it's in compliance with OROS blah de blah? No, okay. I kind of agree, Mike, because as I've said before, and I'll say it again, law does not dictate morality nor what is right. And so I kind of don't really care what's in Oregon law, because I also know that a housing stat, I mean, I do for the cops watching, I do care. I don't care in the context of making every city code in alignment with state code, because I don't think that's going to be possible. And one of the biggest things we're doing is the housing status, which is not written in any state code that I am aware of, because I'm pretty sure it's only Madison, the city, or other city codes that I had heard of it. So yeah, I agree, Mike. Okay. Any other, I'm looking through it too, any other areas that we want to take a look at?
Hi, Carrico.
Yes.
I think the first paragraph under facts and housing status has a glaring omission when it lists examples. I need to put in physical violence.
Yeah.
Given the examples that you've heard, that's just a glaring omission.
Yeah. Exactly. Can we include, okay, so when we send this, and I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but can we include like Linnell's public comments or any of the other comments we're getting when we propose this to the greater city council?
Yeah, certainly. I could add a little thing at the end that says attachment public comment received and then attach the comment.
Okay, yeah, that'd be great, because I kind of want them to know that even though we were working on this long before, we have had people come to us and say, hey, this is a problem. In addition to maybe reminding them about the survey that we did, because that also really highlighted some of the experiences that our unsheltered neighbors were having, which just further fueled this discussion.
Yeah, I almost wondered if the survey summary should be included for HRC, sure, but they've all seen it, but maybe as a reminder for council when it gets to their level. You know, I'm sure they see documents day in and day out, and they may not remember what they have seen in the survey. It would be really great to include the actual language.
Going back, thank you. I've got that noted. Going back up to your point about background, do you think it makes sense just to remove that? I don't think I have a good sense of what additional cities have done this, and agree that I don't know that it adds, and it might imply it's the only other city to leave it in. So maybe there's an argument to just remove it.
I want to err on the side of keeping it, because one of the things I love saying is, yes, we can do it, and look who else is doing it. And I think that would help kind of squash something. Oh, well, we can't do that. Yes, we can. I wonder if it would be worth adding into that background, you know, that this discussion has been ongoing due to the things that we're seeing in the survey and the public comments we received, which are also, you know, attached on the next page, whatever. And maybe that can be reworded so that it's like, you know, one place we know of that is doing this is Madison, Wisconsin. And that implies that there could be more that we're just not aware of, because I'm pretty sure there are. And I tried looking, but I haven't found anything. So
There are. I think I found Louisville, Kentucky has some sort of an ordinance. I haven't actually seen the ordinance itself.
okay.
But I think in the report that Linnell linked to, I think there's some discussion of what other cities are doing. I want to confirm that. But I think we have access to at least in some other cities besides just Madison, Wisconsin.
Is it appropriate to add to that?
Yes, please.
I'm pretty sure that national report lists some cities that are doing it, and I also would confirm, but I'm pretty sure it was more than just one. It wasn't a whole pile, but maybe 2 or 3. So I'll confirm that, and I can send that to Gretchen. And I don't know if it would also be appropriate to include the students' summaries of the discrimination survey, where they shared their personal experiences of how they went into this, even with their own biases, and how they felt afterwards. So I can share that with Gretchen again, as well as I'll confirm what's in the national survey.
Yeah, that would be great, Linnell, because I think it'd be great to offer some, you know, kind of optional supplemental material, you know, so if someone is kind of questioning where this is coming from or why it's being proposed, we have a lot of kind of stuff to back us up. I think there's going to be some commissioners or some city councilors who are like, heck yes, let's do this. And I think there's going to be people who have a lot of questions and concerns, which is great, but I want to be prepared for that. So thank you for providing
I'll
that.
do some homework and send it in. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Any other areas we want to cover for chapter 97?
I have a question for
Yeah.
Gretchen. When I was looking at it, I did find an error in cross references in one of the sections. I don't think it's really within the scope of what we're looking at, but I wanted, what would be the appropriate way to point that out to the people who need to know?
Thank you. If you like, because like you said, I don't know that that comes up as a substantive change. I don't see why I couldn't just give that to our city attorney and point out that we discovered this, that you discovered this, and invite them to just include it whenever, whenever
Right.
it's appropriate for them to include.
Yeah, and I think I included that in the email I sent you.
You did. Thank
Do you want
you.
anything
Good.
more than that, or is that enough?
That looks
for what
good
you
to
need?
me, but
Okay.
I'll circle back with you if they're confused about what I give them.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
That was good eye.
Hello, Angela here. First, good afternoon. Yeah, I can confirm that Louisville, Kentucky does have that as homelessness or houselessness as a protective class. I can send that to you, Gretchen, via email if you want to see
Thank
that.
you. Sure.
I'm also wondering, Gretchen, or maybe this is a question for the attorney, but I'm looking through these definitions. Can we request that we review whatever their definition of unsheltered is before it's put into the statutes? Because I'm looking at they have same like the definition of sexual orientation. I'd be really curious how they define that. And I would want to make sure that that definition is maybe run by actual unsheltered people and advocacy groups so that we're making sure that it makes sense to the people who we are protecting.
Mm-hmm.
Copy that. Do you think the term is unsheltered or housing status?
Yeah, okay. So housing status probably is what they'll go with. Because I would argue people could probably be discriminated for housing that they do have, right? Discrimination can find all sorts of ugly ways to hurt people. So yes, whatever definition they want to use, I want to know what that is.
And the point still certainly applies, just double checking.
Right.
I did want to ask, is there a right, word, would it be our unsheltered, unsheltered individuals, homeless individuals? Is there like a correct word? Because I've heard, I heard both, but I want to make sure I'm using the right term. Is there a right term to that?
I don't know if there's an answer to that, but Linnell, do you have an idea?
So I can give you just a little bit of history and reasons and what we tried and why there's gray. So as advocates, many of us shifted to using the word unsheltered instead of homeless, because homeless conjures the image of this drunk bum on the sidewalk, or some mentally ill person talking to people we can't see, or a drug addict or a criminal. So we didn't want that common image to come up when we talk about people who are homeless. So we shifted to the word unsheltered. There's pros and cons to that. Well, there's also homeless individuals who say, I'm not homeless. The street is my home. Mm-hmm. So, I have a home. It just doesn't have four walls like yours does. So we shifted to unsheltered. The problem with shifting to unsheltered is that HUD has a definition, and HUD uses the term homeless. So if we're talking among ourselves as advocates, we can use the word unsheltered, and we know what we mean, and we know it means a homeless person, and we're trying to conjure a better, more neutral image than the negative image. But if we're talking among city councilors or among people who are, in this work, homeless has a meaning, and it means you don't have those four walls, and that it goes by the HUD definitions. So I think that your concept of going to housing status enables all of that to kind of be covered, because there's a lot of gray. So I will often use unsheltered when I'm talking to advocates, and when I'm talking to on grant reports for HUD or something, I'm using the word homeless, because that's what they're categorizing and it has a definition. But I think if you stick with housing status, or you might be able to kind of cover all of that without getting into those nuances.
And just from a grammatical perspective, unsheltered is a description of a particular status that a person is experiencing, whereas housing status is the category. So I think that, and I think when we talk about what's in Chapter 97, they're all categories, not designed to protect specific groups within those categories, but actually designed to protect the categories. So you could make a case that, and I'm sure somebody will make a case, for example, that, well, is somebody being discriminated against because they live in a big fancy mansion? It's not likely, but at the same time, the status should be protected. Even if it's very, very unlikely that somebody would ever experience discrimination because of their home.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Mike. Like, our protections around gender identity technically protect cis people too, right? Because cis people shouldn't be discriminated against because of their gender. So yes, no one deserves to get, punched because they live in a mansion. That's not how that works. But at the same time, if that is a way to protect them, that's a way to protect them too. So yeah, thank you for that description, Linnell. I agree that housing status will help us encompass everyone. While of course our aim is mostly protect those who are most marginalized, the great thing about human rights is they protect everybody.
Yeah. And the other piece that just came to mind is that unsheltered is often by some people considered to be a category of homelessness. I might be homeless, but I'm living in a shelter. So I'm not actually unsheltered right now, but I don't have a home.
Or
so
it could be
housing status, yeah, I think really covers it all.
Yeah, because it could also just be like general housing instability where, someone is staying with a friend or something very temporary, but they're not really, in a stable home or in a home that they have agency and control over, which can lead to other problems as well.
And some people live in their car, but, still have shelter, but you don't have a home. So yeah, everything you're saying, you guys, you've got it.
Okay. I think that answers your question, Angela, but makes it a lot more complicated.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, I thank you, Linnell and Mike. I think, as you said, it makes it a little more complicated, but I understand. So
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments about 97? Okay. Gretchen, do you want to read back our amendments so we can make sure we've captured all of those?
Yes, and let's see. It might be simplest if I use the draft report as a beginning place. So I think the first amendment is in the first paragraph under housing status, and we would add physical violence to the list of situations. We will request a review of the definition of housing status, and that review shall include an opportunity to ensure that people with lived experience and people who are advocates have the opportunity to check it out. Underneath gender identity and sexual orientation, in the paragraph that's there, we will omit the sentence that reads, "This section is consistent with Oregon Revised Statute." That sentence will be eliminated. We will perhaps create some bullets or additional paragraphs. And we will secondly ask that that the city remove gendered language in chapter 97 and replace either with they, them pronouns or not have gendered language at all, depending on the context. We will have a third section underneath sexual orientation and gender identity to request a revision of the term sexual orientation to be more inclusive. And we can offer Human Rights Campaign as an example. Let's see if a definition is needed at all. I don't know if you want to clarify that or not.
I think I do want a definition for that one, yes.
Okay, great. Then I will just say we'd like a revision to be more inclusive, such as HRC.
Yeah.
We will amend the background section to provide some context that, this conversation has been ongoing. We will add the second example of Louisville, Kentucky, and point out that these are cities that we know of. And then we will have an extra thing at the end that says attachments. And I think I'm hearing 2 attachments, and the first would be public comment. And we have Linnell's public comment and links. And then a second attachment would be the shelter survey summary, including the students' voices.
Wasn't there another public comment from someone last meeting or the meeting prior about violence experienced by unsheltered folks? I feel like someone wrote a letter or an email to you.
Thank you. I'll go back and look.
Yeah, if you could include that in addition to Linnell's, I think that'd be helpful.
Copy that. I also need to fix the header. Mike's right. We've got the old safe space program reference on there, and I need to fix the header as well. A grammatical problem there, or, typo.
Is it appropriate to add the national study as well?
Oh, yes, because I think that had more details about the other cities' protected language, yeah?
And specific violence?
Yes,
or
okay.
degree?
Then let's include that national report as well. Thank you, Linnell.
Gotcha. So that would be in the attachments. Got it.
Okay, I think that covers it. Do we vote now to, so do we have to make a motion? Is that how it works?
Yeah, I would recommend that you make a motion to approve the staff report as amended.
Okay, can I make that motion or does it have to be somebody else?
Typically, the chair entertains a motion, so I think you'd want
Okay.
it to come from the team.
I will make a motion to adopt the staff report as amended.
Thank you, Mike. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Angelo. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you so much. How exciting. I'm so excited.
This
to
is
move
really
forward.
cool.
So next steps are we go to the rest of the commission. Yeah, Gretchen?
Correct.
Cool. Okay, so we'll have this ready for our next commission meeting, hopefully.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, these changes are easy to make. So if that's all right with Angelo, it can be a part of the action items, and that meeting is December 8th.
Can you also do me a huge favor and send over a copy to Dr. Brown saying, hey, this is what we agreed on. Can you just take a look and let us know if there's anything you have concerns about? Because I do trust Dr. Brown's judgment, and he's been instrumental in writing a lot of this stuff.
Will do.
And yes, that's okay with me.
Thank you. Okay, this is really cool, especially because my updates have been, I don't know, we haven't met yet. And now my next update is going to be like, here you go.
2 meetings and we got it.
Yeah,
That's good.
yeah. Thank you so much, Kathy, for looking at all those little details and catching all that stuff. And thank you all for being a part of this discussion. So I think that's everything. Do we have any member remarks and announcements? Okay, well, again, thank you all so much for working on this. This is really exciting. And I'm super looking forward to talking about it in our next meeting. Angela, did you want to say something? I saw you come off mute.
Oh, no, nothing.
Okay.
Thank you all so much. I am I am so grateful that you're considering this and are going to make this recommendation. And I'm touched to tears. Thank you for all your work and for considering this.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Linnell, for all of your help.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
Thanks. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. Have a great evening.